Now we're joined by Finance Minister Matthias Cormann now in a Parliament House studio. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning, good to be here.
Now, great to have you. How is Education Minister Christopher Pyne going to change the minds of those crossbench senators who are quite determined to continue voting against the higher education reforms?
Well, Christopher Pyne has worked very hard to progress what are very important reforms for our universities, for students and for our country. They're designed to ensure that our universities can be as competitive internationally as possible, that our students get the best possible education, preparing them for their workplace. And of course, Christopher Pyne has been able to convince 4 crossbench senators to support our reforms. We need 6, so there's 2 more to go. Situation normal. Many structural reforms in the past did not pass the Senate on the first attempt. The previous government had to put various reforms to the Senate 2 or 3 times. We will bring those reforms back in February and hopefully we'll be able to convince 2 more crossbench senators.
And one of those crossbench senators, as you know, Glenn Lazarus, is particularly unhappy with the way Christopher Pyne has gone about this. How is that going to change?
Christopher Pyne was very committed to get his reforms through this week. We're now going to work on getting them through in February, March next year. Obviously, as I understand it, Christopher has tried to have meetings with Senator Lazarus, and that hasn't been possible, and so text messaging apparently was the only way of communicating. But look, obviously between now and early next year, conversations will be continuing with those senators that are prepared to talk to us, and we need 2 more senators in order to get a majority support in the Senate, and we're going to continue to focus on that because we need to get those reforms through the Parliament in our national interest.
Do you believe Christopher Pyne went overboard with the text messaging?
No, I don't. I believe that Christopher Pyne was totally focused and committed on passing what are very important structural reforms designed to ensure that our students have got the best possible opportunity into the future to receive an education at the best possible universities across Australia that are nationally, internationally competitive, and of course the efforts will be continuing.
All this comes down, Matthias Cormann, to, as you say, building, consolidating, sustaining relations with those crossbench senators. We know you have a fairly good relationship with Clive Palmer. There was that photo of you and him meeting in that Canberra hotel, I think it was Sunday night. So you're talking to him. Can your colleagues like Christopher Pyne draw messages from you, take lessons from you in terms of negotiating with these crossbench senators? Well,
Christopher Pyne is very good at negotiating, but of course this, it is a very significant structural reform, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer than we would like to get, enough people in the Senate to support the reforms that we want to progress. But the work will be continuing. All of us work as a team. We will all pitch in to ensure that important reforms will ultimately get through the Parliament.
If this reform fails for a second time, how will the government go about filling that $5 billion hole in the budget?
Well, I don't accept the premise of that question because we're very confident, that over time we'll be able to convince the necessary 6 non-government senators to support what is a very important reform. We will be bringing the relevant legislation back in February, let's see how we go.
Is this, in the Prime Minister's words, Matthias Cormann, has this been another very ragged week for the government?
No, I don't believe so. This year has been a very good year, really. If you, by any objective measure, if you look at what has been achieved over the past 12 months, we've been able effectively to stop the boats as promised. We were able to repeal the carbon tax, which is good for families and business. We've been able to repeal the mining tax. We've been able to reduce significant levels of excessive red tape, all of which is designed to help build a stronger, more prosperous economy where everyone can get ahead. We'll just continue to press ahead. Budget repair has, it's not finished, obviously. There's still some challenges ahead of us, but we've made significant progress, and we can say with some certainty that the situation is better than it would have been if Labor had been returned to government at the last election.
You make that point, and of course the polls show something entirely different. Voters are marking the government down and the Prime Minister down quite heavily.
Well, we've had to make some difficult but necessary decisions over the past 12 months. That's not always popular, but of course in the lead up to the next election, which is still about 2 years away, we're very hopeful, quietly very hopeful that over time people will accept that what we've been doing was right for the country and has strengthened our country for the future.
The media budget update is due to be released by the Treasurer within the next fortnight. Will there be further cuts in that media update?
Well, obviously what the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook will show is that since the budget, commodity prices have fallen more sharply than anticipated, and of course, whoever is in government on the revenue side, there is a limited level of control on what can happen on the revenue side in relation to these sorts of matters. Now, on the spending side, though, what it will also show is that wherever the government has made decisions because of unforeseen circumstances to spend more, such as on our national security in the context of a heightened security threat level, that we will be offsetting whatever additional expenditure we've had to incur since the budget.
So offsetting means more cuts in the mid-year budget update?
Well, it means reprioritising the expenditure across the whole of the government.
Are they expected to be fairly savage cuts?
Well, what we've said is we're not going to be chasing down the revenue impact from lower commodity prices. I mean, the iron ore price is down to $63 a tonne. 20% of our export income comes from iron ore exports, so obviously that's going to have a significant impact on our revenue collections. We won't be chasing down the falling revenue in the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, but what we will be doing is making sure that wherever we've had to spend money on higher priorities, that is offset by savings on areas that in the circumstances are a less high priority.
And finally, is the government confident of achieving its aim of a balanced budget by 2017-18?
Well, we'll be working to achieve a balanced budget as soon as possible.
Within that time frame, though?
Well, as soon as possible. Obviously, when circumstances change, it is only responsible to reassess what can responsibly be achieved in the time frame that is in front of us. But the commitment is that we will be achieving a budget surplus as soon as possible. And given that Labor's decision so far would see a worsening of the budget bottom line by $43 billion, we're very confident that we will be achieving a surplus more quickly than the Labor Party would in government.
Matthias Cormann, thank you for your time this morning.
Always good to talk to you.
Now moving